In the peaceful town of Charleston, South Carolina, there lived a woman named Maria Valentina, a name that echoed respect, devotion, and unwavering faith. From the age of 13, Maria had been dedicated to the church. Over the years, she rose to become a highly respected nun, a symbol of purity, kindness, and spiritual discipline. People from all over the town came to seek her advice, hear her gentle sermons, and bring their children to learn values of love, obedience, and devotion. Inside the church school where she taught, her words often carried weight beyond their simplicity. Her voice was soft but steady. Her eyes held compassion, and her posture radiated discipline. For many, she was not just a spiritual teacher, she was a living embodiment of virtue. But what no one knew was that Maria's heart carried a silent conviction, one she had never questioned. That conviction was this: Christianity was the only truth. Islam, in her eyes, was a foreign, almost threatening religion. She had grown up with stories of danger, fanaticism, and fear associated with it. Not out of hatred, but out of inherited belief, she thought Islam was misguided. Whenever people asked about other religions, Maria's answer was gentle but clear. Only through Christ can salvation be found. For her, the matter was closed. There was no reason to search outside the light she believed she had already found. Until the day her entire world shattered. It was a sunny afternoon. After a warm session with the children at church, Maria decided to drive out of town to visit her sister. The sky was a golden canvas, the trees dancing softly in the wind. The long, winding road brought peace to her soul. She turned up the soft gospel music in her car and smiled. But peace has a strange way of hiding what's coming. On a sharp curve near a cliff, a truck came speeding in the opposite direction. It crossed into her lane with terrifying force. Maria tried to swerve, but there was no time. The crash was violent. Her car rolled over, smashing into the rocky side of the road. Glass shattered. Metal twisted. The world went black. When the paramedics arrived, they found her limp body in the wreck. No pulse. No breath. Her skin had gone cold. After checking multiple times, they shook their heads and recorded the time of death. Maria Valentina, the beloved nun, was gone. She was placed in a coffin. The news spread through Charleston like wildfire. A nun, known for her goodness, had tragically passed away in an accident. The church began preparations for the funeral. Flowers were arranged. Condolence messages came flooding in. The air was filled with mourning. But something no one could explain happened that very evening. As the church stood dim and solemn, with only a few candles flickering near the altar, Maria's fingers twitched inside the coffin. Then her eyes shot open. Gasps erupted. One priest collapsed in shock. Another screamed. But Maria sat up, dazed, pale, breathing slowly, alive. The silence that followed was not from peace, but pure disbelief. Maria could barely process what had happened. Her mind still swirled in confusion. Her body felt heavy. Her soul felt strange. It was not just a miracle of surviving a declared death, it was what she had seen, or rather, felt, in that darkness. Because to Maria, she hadn't just blacked out. She had entered a realm where time did not exist. There was no sound, no movement, just pitch-black stillness. She floated, or perhaps existed, in this space where nothing was visible, but everything was felt. And then came a voice. Soft. Clear. Gentle. Seek the truth. Not just justification. Maria couldn't tell where the voice came from. It wasn't male or female. It wasn't commanding or accusing. It simply was. A voice filled with love. A voice that pierced through her every thought. The voice echoed again. Seek the truth. Maria felt regret rise in her heart like a tide. Not for dying, but for something deeper. For never asking, never searching, never wondering if what she believed was all there was. Her certainty, once her pride, now felt like a cage she had never looked beyond. Then, a warmth surrounded her. A light. Faint, but growing. And then, she awoke. That night Maria could not sleep. Her hands trembled. Her thoughts spiraled. What had happened? Had she died? Had God spoken to her? Was it a hallucination? She looked around the room of the church that she had known for decades. But for the first time, it felt unfamiliar. The crucifix above her bed no longer gave comfort, it stirred questions. She picked up her Bible and opened it, but the pages felt different. Her mind read the words, but her heart didn't follow. It was as if a veil had been lifted, and now, she was being asked, no, invited, to explore something deeper. Not reject her past. Not forget her path. But to search. That one sentence, seek the truth, not just justification, replayed in her mind like a sacred riddle. Maria didn't tell the church. Not yet. How could she? They were celebrating her return as a miracle. But they didn't know that inside her, everything was unraveling. She sat in front of the window of her small room and watched the sunrise. It was the same sun that rose every morning. But today, it looked completely different. The morning sun poured into Maria's modest church room, but she sat unmoved. A Bible lay on her lap, open to the book of Psalms. Her lips tried to recite verses she had known since childhood, but something inside her had changed. Her voice trembled, her heart hesitated. What once flowed like a melody now felt forced and unfamiliar. Maria was not just struggling with grief. She was wrestling with a storm brewing deep within her soul. The voice she had heard in that realm of darkness still whispered in her ears. Seek the truth. Not just justification. It haunted her. She tried to dismiss it as a side effect of trauma. Maybe it was the brain reacting to near death. Maybe it was a dream. But no matter how hard she tried to explain it away, the voice would not leave her. And neither would the feeling of regret she felt during that dark silence, the sense that her spiritual convictions had become walls instead of doors. At church, she pretended to be the same. She smiled at the children. She gave blessings. But at night, when the candles were out and only the moonlight spilled through the stained glass windows, Maria would sit in her bed with tears streaking her face. She was no longer sure of anything. Her doubts grew sharper one Sunday evening. After Mass, as she was walking home, she passed a park bench and noticed an old woman sitting there, feeding pigeons. The woman wore a simple cream-colored hijab, her face wrinkled with time but glowing with peace. Maria felt an inexplicable pull toward her and sat down on the other end of the bench. They didn't speak at first. Just watched the birds flutter and peck. Then the old woman turned to her and said with a kind smile, "Sometimes God knocks more than once." Maria blinked, surprised. "Excuse me?" The woman chuckled softly. "You look like someone waiting for an answer." Maria's heart skipped a beat. I don't know what I'm looking for," she whispered honestly. The woman replied, "If you want to find peace, you must open your heart to a truth greater than what you already know." She didn't say anything more. Just stood up, patted Maria gently on the shoulder, and walked away, leaving her stunned and shaken. That sentence stuck in Maria's mind for days. She didn't even know who the woman was. But the words she spoke had gone deeper than any sermon Maria had delivered. That night, unable to sleep, Maria opened her laptop. With a deep breath, she typed something she never imagined she would search for. "What does Islam say about Jesus?" The results startled her. She had expected to find rejection, contradiction, maybe even blasphemy. But instead, she found reverence, respect, affection. Jesus, peace be upon him, was a prophet, born miraculously of the Virgin Mary, sent as a messenger to guide humanity to worship the one true God. Maria leaned back in her chair, her heartbeat thudding in her chest. She clicked on more links. She read verses from the Qur'an translated into English. She came across the Surah Maryam, the chapter dedicated to Mary. She read every word. And wept. Maryam honored. Maryam defended. Maryam, alone and in pain, giving birth under a palm tree, crying out to God. It was raw. Real. Tender. She saw herself in those verses. A woman questioning, aching, trying to obey, yet carrying heavy burdens. By morning, Maria had read dozens of pages. She wasn't sure what she believed yet, but something was stirring in her. Something unfamiliar but magnetic. Her fears, once anchored in certainty, were now being pulled apart by curiosity. Over the next few days, she continued exploring. Quietly. Privately. She watched lectures by former Christians who embraced Islam. She heard the testimonies of priests, ministers, and monks who had walked away from their religious traditions after feeling a similar unease, after discovering in the Qur'an a connection that was not found elsewhere. It scared her. Not because she was angry at what she was finding, but because it made too much sense. She still believed in God, still revered Jesus. But the idea of God as one, without partners or intermediaries, began to resonate with her. It wasn't about rejecting Jesus. It was about understanding him differently. As a prophet, not a deity. As a servant of God, not the Son of God. And then one night, while listening to a recitation of the Qur'an, she broke down completely. It was a verse from Surah Al-Baqarah. This is the book about which there is no doubt, a guidance for those conscious of Allah. Maria covered her mouth and wept. For years she had clung to tradition out of fear. She had judged other faiths without ever exploring them. And now, here she was, feeling closer to God than ever before, not in her chapel, but in the middle of an unfamiliar language, a different scripture, and a voice that refused to leave her heart. But she was afraid. Afraid of what this would mean for her life. Her role as a nun. Her reputation. Her family. What would her parents think? Would she be cast out by the church? Would she lose everything? She needed to talk to someone. Someone who had walked this path before. That week, she reached out to an old friend, Sister Claire, who had left the convent years ago and moved abroad. Rumors had circulated that Claire had converted to Islam, but Maria had never dared to ask her directly. Now, she had no choice. They met at a small cafe outside of town. Maria looked pale. Claire looked radiant. I've been seeing things. Feeling things, Maria said nervously. Claire smiled warmly. I know. You do? I went through the same storm, Maria, she said gently. I didn't leave God. I just found him in a place I never expected. Maria broke down. What if it's true? What if everything I believed has been a step, not a destination? Claire leaned forward and whispered. Then take the next step. And don't be afraid. Maria wiped her tears. That night she sat in her room with a small Qur'an open on her lap. And for the first time, she spoke aloud. God, if this is truly from you, guide me. I'll follow. The air was quiet in Maria's room, yet her heart pounded like a drum. Her whispered prayer the night before, asking God for guidance, had awakened something inside her. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a teacher or a nun, or even a Christian. She felt like a seeker. And seekers weren't afraid to ask questions. Not anymore. Over the next few weeks, Maria immersed herself in the Qur'an with greater attention. She began her days with silent contemplation, poring over translated verses and notes. The more she read, the deeper she felt pulled, not just intellectually, but spiritually. She found herself moved by the stories of the prophets. Their trials. Their sincerity. Their unwavering message, there is no God but God. It echoed in every page. The more Maria learned about Islam, the more she realized it wasn't a denial of her past, it was a continuation. She didn't feel as though she was abandoning God. She felt as if she was getting closer to Him than she had ever been. But with that closeness came fear. She could no longer deny what her heart was telling her, but accepting Islam would cost her dearly. Her identity, her position in the church, her community, her family. Every night Maria sat at her desk, hands trembling, as she wrote in her journal. If I take this step, what will I lose? But if I don't, what am I rejecting? Her dreams became filled with images, of stars, of open doors, of rivers flowing endlessly. One night she dreamed she was standing at the edge of a cliff, surrounded by fog. Behind her stood the church, familiar and solemn. Before her, nothing but the unknown. But then, a warm light emerged from the fog, and she stepped forward. Maria woke up crying. The time had come. She called Claire. I'm ready, she said. Claire didn't ask what she meant. She already knew. That Friday afternoon, Maria dressed modestly in a long coat and scarf. She didn't wear a cross. For the first time in years, she removed it from her neck and placed it gently in a drawer. Not out of disrespect, but out of clarity. With her heart pounding, she entered the small mosque on the outskirts of town. The soft sound of Arabic recitation greeted her. She looked around nervously, feeling like an outsider. But then a kind woman approached her and said, "Welcome, sister." Those words shattered her fears. She was not an outsider. She was home. Maria sat down with the imam. She told him her story, the accident, the voice, the doubts, the search. He listened quietly, never interrupting. When she finished, he simply smiled and said, "When God wants to guide someone, He opens their chest to truth." She nodded, wiping away tears. "Are you ready?" he asked gently. Maria looked at the imam, then at the other women who had gathered to witness this moment, strangers, yet sisters. And with her voice shaking, but her soul steady, Maria recited, "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I bear witness there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is His messenger." The room was silent for a moment, as if the air itself paused to witness the transformation. And then, soft whispers of Allahu Akbar filled the mosque. Tears flowed. Smiles bloomed. Maria didn't just convert. She was reborn. As the congregation congratulated her, she felt a peace so profound that it made her knees weak. For years she had spoken about God. But now, she finally felt connected to Him. There were no candles, no choirs, no stained glass. Just sincerity, simplicity, and truth. But peace, as Maria soon learned, came with a price. When she returned home, she sat at her small kitchen table and wrote 2 letters, one to the church, and one to her parents. She couldn't explain everything in words, but she tried. She told them she had not turned away from God, but had turned toward Him in a way she never imagined. She left the letters at the church doorstep and mailed the one to her parents. The response came quicker than she expected. Her mother called her in tears. "Maria, how could you? After all these years? You were our pride." Maria didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. "I know you're hurting, Mom," she whispered. "But I've never felt more at peace in my life." Her mother hung up. Her father didn't call at all. The next day, the church issued a statement. "Sister Maria Valentina is no longer part of our order." Her former colleagues refused to see her. Some friends blocked her number. Maria sat in her room that night, staring at the same crucifix above her bed that had once defined her life. She lowered it gently from the wall, wrapped it in cloth, and placed it in a box. Tears fell, not of regret, but of mourning. Mourning the loss of a life that had shaped her, but could no longer hold her. She had stepped into a new world. One that would test her, stretch her, break her perhaps, but also rebuild her. That night, she fell asleep with the Qur'an on her bedside. She no longer needed to chase voices in the dark. She had found the light. Weeks passed since Maria Valentina had taken the Shahida. Her heart was full of peace, but her world had changed completely. The silence of her old room was now deeper. Not because it lacked sound, but because it echoed with absence. Absence of friends. Of family. Of the comfort that used to wrap around her in the church corridors. She had gained faith, but lost familiarity. Her parents no longer spoke to her. Her mother's last words over the phone had been sharp, painful. "You've abandoned everything we gave you." Her father sent nothing but silence. The church community, who once welcomed her with open arms, now treated her as if she had never existed. Even her own reflection looked unfamiliar. Maria now wore a hijab. At first, it felt foreign. She fumbled with the fabric, unsure of how to wrap it neatly. But over time, it became a part of her identity, not just cloth, but comfort. Every time she looked into the mirror and saw it, she felt a quiet kind of strength. But not everyone around her saw it that way. At the local grocery store, people stared. Some whispered. A few looked away in disgust. She could feel it, the judgment, the assumptions. Some saw her as lost. Others as a traitor. Still, Maria remained calm. Inside the mosque, she had found something the church never gave her: unconditional acceptance. The women there didn't care about her past. They didn't demand explanations. They simply welcomed her as a sister. "You don't have to prove anything," one of them told her. "We're all here to seek Allah." Maria began to attend study circles. She learned about the 5 pillars of Islam, the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the meaning of prayer, and the significance of patience. Every lesson was like water to her soul, soothing, cleansing. Yet, despite the newfound serenity, her heart remained heavy with grief over her parents. She missed her mother's voice. Her father's dry humor. The way they used to gather on Sundays for lunch and talk about small, unimportant things. So one evening, after praying Maghrib, Maria picked up her phone and sent her mother a message. "I still love you. I always will. I haven't turned away from God. I've just found Him more clearly. I hope one day you can see that." There was no reply. But she sent it anyway. And somehow, that gave her peace. One Friday, after Jumu'ah prayer, Maria stayed behind to help clean the prayer hall. An elderly woman approached her, the same one she had met in the park weeks before. "You remembered me." Maria smiled. The woman nodded. "I remember seekers. You had the eyes of someone looking for the truth." Maria's smile faded a little. "It's been difficult." "It always is," the woman replied. "But peace isn't free. The price is everything you thought you couldn't live without." Maria blinked. The words struck deep. That evening, Maria sat in her living room, surrounded by books and notebooks filled with scribbled Arabic letters. She had been learning how to read the Qur'an in Arabic, and although it was challenging, each letter brought her closer to understanding the divine words in their original form. But then her phone rang. It was her mother. Maria froze. With trembling hands she answered. "Hello?" A long silence. Then her mother's voice, softer than before. "Are you okay?" Maria's eyes welled up. "Yes, Mom. I am. I don't understand what you're doing," her mother said. "But I miss you. I miss you too," Maria whispered. There were no promises. No resolution. But the call was something. A small crack of light in the wall between them. That night, Maria prostrated in prayer longer than usual, tears soaking her prayer rug. Not because she was sad, but because she was grateful. For the pain. For the silence. For the transformation. For the faith that had cost her everything but given her something far greater. Days continued. Maria began volunteering at the mosque's food bank. She tutored young Muslim girls on weekends, telling them stories of Maryam, Mary, and slowly opened up about her own journey, only when asked. One day, a teenage girl asked her, "Sister Maria, do you ever miss being a nun?" Maria paused. "I miss the people," she said honestly. "I miss their love. But I don't miss the feeling of being incomplete." The girl nodded thoughtfully. That night, Maria reflected on her answer. She realized she didn't miss the rituals of her old life. She missed the community, the shared moments. But in Islam, she was slowly building something better, a community rooted not just in tradition, but in sincerity and shared search. Eventually, her mother agreed to meet. They sat in a small coffee shop downtown. The conversation was hesitant at first. Her mother kept glancing at the hijab. "You look different," she said. "I feel different," Maria replied. Her mother sighed. "I don't know how to process this." Maria reached across the table. "You don't have to. Just know I'm still your daughter." Tears filled her mother's eyes. She didn't speak again. But she didn't pull her hand away. Maria knew healing would take time. Maybe years. But the door was no longer locked. As she walked home that night, the wind brushing her scarf, Maria looked up at the stars. She smiled. Her journey had begun in darkness, in silence, in doubt. But now she walked in clarity. Not without wounds, not without loss, but with faith. The seasons in Charleston began to change, but Maria's days remained steady, rooted in simplicity and purpose. Each morning started with fard prayer, followed by quiet recitation of the Qur'an. Her room, once adorned with crosses and rosaries, now held prayer rugs, Arabic flashcards, and a small wooden shelf with Islamic books. Peace didn't mean life got easier, but it meant her heart was no longer in chaos. Her relationship with her parents had not fully mended, but small things had begun to change. Her mother sent her texts on holidays. Her father, though still distant, had stopped speaking in anger. Maria was learning to live with this gentle in-between, the ache of what was lost, and the beauty of what had been found. One day at the mosque, the imam invited Maria to share her story during a women's gathering. "I don't know where to begin," she said nervously. "Begin where your heart woke up," he replied. So she did. She stood before a small group of women, young, old, converts, born Muslims, and told them everything. The accident, the darkness, the voice, the questions, the tears, the Qur'an, the Shaida, the pain of rejection, the joy of rebirth. "I didn't change because I was convinced," she said. "I changed because I was called." A woman in the audience cried softly. Another whispered Subhanallah. Maria finished with a smile, her voice steady. "I lost the life I built, but I found the life I was meant to live." From that day on, she began mentoring other converts at the mosque, especially women who, like her, had walked away from their old worlds with trembling hearts. Weeks passed. Maria became more fluent in her Arabic readings. She started journaling Islamic reflections. She began fasting on Mondays and Thursdays, not out of obligation, but as a spiritual offering. Her soul felt lighter. But deep down, one part of her still longed for reconciliation with her family, not for validation, but for love. One cold winter morning, her mother called again. "We're having a Christmas dinner," she said hesitantly. "I know you don't celebrate it anymore, but would you like to come?" Maria was silent for a moment. Then softly, "Yes, Mom. I'd love to come." She prepared carefully, modest clothes, a soft red hijab, and a box of chocolates as a gift. When she walked through the front door, her parents were waiting in the living room. There was tension, yes, but also warmth. Her mother hugged her. Her father nodded. No harsh words. No religious arguments. Just quiet conversation and cautious smiles. During dinner, Maria didn't preach. She didn't argue. She just listened, laughed gently at old stories, and spoke from the heart when asked. "I'm still me," she said once. "Just more at peace." That night, as she left, her mother walked her to the door. "I don't understand everything," she said, "but I see that you're happy. That means something." Maria hugged her tightly. "It means everything." That moment didn't erase all the wounds, but it planted something deeper than agreement, acceptance. In the following months, Maria's life blossomed in ways she never expected. She began teaching interfaith workshops at a local community center, bridging understanding between Christians, Muslims, and people of all backgrounds. Her calm voice and unique journey made her a powerful speaker. She wasn't trying to convert anyone. She was simply sharing her story. Her story became a light for others. One afternoon, a young woman approached her after a seminar. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I've been reading the Qur'an in secret. I feel what you felt. But I don't know how to leave everything behind." Maria smiled with quiet understanding. "You're not leaving everything," she said. "You're returning to something your soul has always known." The girl cried in her arms. Maria held her. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Not in a chapel. Not on a stage. But in the simple space between fear and faith, guiding others across it. One evening, after Isha prayer, Maria walked to the beach nearby. The sky was dark. The waves gentle. She spread her prayer rug on the cool sand, faced the Qibla, and prayed alone beneath the stars. As she made sujud, tears streamed down her face, not of pain, but of gratitude. She whispered, "Thank you, Allah, for the darkness that showed me the light." She stayed in prostration for a long time, feeling the earth beneath her hands, the sky above her, and the peace within her. Maria Valentina had once been declared dead. But now, she was more alive than ever.